right, welcome back. You're watching Newsx. My name is Vineet Malhotra. With the new GST regime announced by Finance Minister yesterday and set to come in effect from the 22nd of September, a lot of questions have come up regarding the different taxes, goods and services will now be subjected to. Over the next half an hour, we will be examining in some detail the key sectors of automobiles, hospitality and healthcare and education, with detailed insights into the specific provisions for these sectors as well. Joining us on the broadcast to talk more about this at this point in time is Dr. Sharath Kohli, Senior Economist. Mr. Raj Kapoor, Senior Automobile Expert and Analyst, also joins us on the show. CA Vinod Rawal, Tax and GST Expert. And last but by no means the least, Mr. Vinesh Menon, Director General and CEO of Arise, is also with us on the program. Dr. Kohli, I'll begin with you. Haven't had the opportunity to discuss these reforms with you. What do they mean for the country is the number one question that I want to know from you. And secondly, how are these new reforms, which have been pending for quite some time, likely to revive or rather add another layer of fillip to the Indian economy, Dr. Kohli? Dr. Kohli, if you're there with us. All right, there seems to be an issue with Dr. Kohli's connection. We'll have him join us momentarily. All right, Mr. Vinesh Menon is also with us on the broadcast. Vinesh, I hope you can hear me.
Vinesh? I can, Vineet. Hi.
Vinesh, thank you for joining us, and that too at a short notice. First up, at a cursory level, what do you make of these GST reforms? We all know that they have been pending for a very, very long time. And secondly, Vinesh, there is also this umbrella, or rather, this elephant in the room we all have been referring to as the American taxes, but they do not relate to a number of ground realities when it comes to the GST. You are, of course, doing great work in the education sector. How has that sector been impacted by this reform by the government?
Yeah, Vineet, thank you. Look, as a nationalist, any move that puts more money in the hands of the people to boost consumption is a welcome move. And therefore, I think the move to have 3 blocks of GST, 5, 18, 40, time to meet the Diwali fervor is a great move, and I welcome it. Today also happens to be Education Day or Teachers' Day. And I think a few education tools like maps, charts, globes, pencils, etc. have also moved into the 0% 0% block. Again, good move, augurs well, helps make education more affordable. My only point is, I think all of us agree that if India has to become Viksit in the next 22 odd years, it really means that much more has to be done in the area of education. There's a lot of emphasis on NEP 2020. And if you really go deep into this, you realize that the entire education framework is now slowly transitioning from an old way of education delivery to a very new way of education delivery. There's far more emphasis on digital devices, far more emphasis on delivery through experiential learning. 260 million school-going children in 1.5 million schools, both private and public sector. So while a lot of good things are happening, my only ask and only request to the Honorable Finance Minister is, would it merit revisiting the GST framework a little more for the education as a sector? It is an essential requirement for a healthy nation. A lot of good things happening there. Security, transportation, canteen services are all exempt from GST. Is there a scope to widen this ambit of services simply to try and get education to be far more affordable, to get more good schools coming into the system? So there's a little bit of, it's a mixed feeling of great stuff happening. Just a little bit of help on the education sector is perhaps what I'd like to place on the table.
All right, fair enough. Those are good points. Dr. Kohli, good to have you back with us. First up, your response, a cursory response to these reforms, which have been pending for a very, very long time. Now that they have happened, they are going to put us on the track to an economy which is not only resilient. Why I use the word resilient is, of course, considering that we have the American tariffs to deal with. And secondly, this is also something which promises prosperity, other than the prosperity that the Indian economy has been able to self-generate for the last few decades.
Good evening, Vineet. Good evening to my fellow panelists and Newsx viewers. My apologies. I think there was some sudden collapse of network, which I couldn't speak what I wanted to last time. Thank you for coming back to me. I think if you look at a few months backwards, First of all, the RBI cut down the rates. Then in the budget, the 12 lakhs magical rebate given to income taxpayers, combined with GST, and a good monsoon, reasonably good monsoon. It's been a little excessive in certain areas, but reasonably good monsoon, I would say, apart from the bad impact of floods in some areas. I think it's a perfect recipe for a growth engine to be firing at all cylinders. And it is, for that matter, 7.8%. If there was a slowdown in pockets in some of the sectors, I think that will be ironed out by this particular step. So this GST is a huge reform. My back of the envelope calculations, I had spoken to your channel yesterday as well, says that somebody earning a salary of 100,000 rupees a month, spending about 40,000 rupees only on groceries. Let's not talk of air conditioners, refrigerators, or buying a car. I mean, that can be kept apart for now. So we'll save about 4,000 to 5,000 rupees. And if he has to go and buy a car, he has to go and buy a refrigerator, an air conditioner, a dishwasher, a washing machine, so and so, he ends up saving more. So what does a person typically do when you save money? A psychological survey in financial respect shows that when you're used to spending 40,000 rupees a month on your groceries, what you would typically do, and if you save 4,000, what you would typically do is there's only 20% chance that you're going to put that money in your bank and build an SIP or probably deposit in another account. You will end up spending because you're used to spending that. So you'll end up spending in a different item, improving your lifestyle, going for a better brand, or buying more of the same thing, which probably you were a bit frugal in buying. So so it's going to boost consumption, it's going to boost demand. And if we move forward, this is going to expand the production capacities. You end up setting new factories. You'll have these exporters who've been suffering from the Trump drama. You will find some of them that, okay, let's forget about America for now. Let's set up a factory. There's a 65 to 70 crore, middle class in India, including the neo middle class. Let me start producing something for them. I already have a factory. I already have a machine. I've got manpower. Let me invest some money which government's hand holding. So this is going to provide that impetus, which is so much required. Now, why is it required? Because somebody would say, why would you need it? Because you're already growing at 7.8%. The reason is the global headwinds and the Donald Trump drama. I think so. That is the problem which we have to encounter, and we should not forget, because the kind of bullying that we are witnessing from the US, he's trying to pressurize the EU and some of the other countries to put sanctions against trade with India. So if, God forbid, that be the situation, we have to prepare ourselves. We've got $825 billion plus of export. But if there is a danger to a certain extent for that number, we have to be prepared. And I think there is enough demand locally. We are a consumption-driven economy. 60% of our economy is comprised of consumption. So this is a step directly towards consumption. And then it helps 1.5 crore beneath the registered dealers who've got GST registration with them. And it helps the government. It will bring additional revenue. The Laffer theory says that typically a small bump in the tax collections, eventually you will end up seeing more compliance. Your tax collection is going to go up phenomenally. So I think this is across the board a revolutionary reform. I would say after GST, this is the biggest tax reform which has been seen in this century, because across the board cut on literally all the items. Literally, there are a few items which have moved to higher, from 12 to 18. But almost 90% or more than 90% items have moved downward. Never before such a massive step has been taken for a price reduction. Let me not call it GST for a moment. This is a straightaway case of price reduction induced by the government. It is upon the industry now. I'm getting to hear some shady voices from the industry. We will try and absorb some of our additional costs and not pass on the entire thing, although the Commerce Minister has been requesting repeatedly to the industry. So if that mischief doesn't happen, and the entire thing is passed on, I see a 5 to 15% reduction in prices. I can decipher this even more as we progress, Vineet.
You're absolutely right. And that is going to be a task for the government to make sure that this kind of an advantage, which has been extended in the form of a GST reform, is not misused. Before, in fact, we take this discussion forward, I'm going to go to the big screen and try and address some of the frequently asked questions which have, of course, been coming through There's been an influx of questions on what does this reform actually really do and what does this mean, the GST 2.0. So starting with the number one query is, what kind of cars will get cheaper? Well, the answer is cars under certain specifications will only be charged 18% GST, such as petrol and hybrid cars that had a GST of 28% will now have 18%. What kind of cars will get expensive? Well, racing cars, station wagons, hybrid, petrol, diesel vehicles over 4,000 mm in length or prescribed limit in horsepower will get costlier, because this is being done for a number of reasons. They are pollutants, a lot of them, in one way or the other. And earlier the GST on them was 28% and now it's at 40%. Of course, the same thing for the diesel hybrid cars above 1500cc as well. Question number 3, what's the situation with electric vehicles? Well, electric vehicles across the spectrum are charged a flat rate of 5%, and that will continue to prevail. E-rickshaws, some of the popular cars by brands such as Tata and MG will obviously continue to have that environmental and ecological edge when it comes to taxation purposes as well. And this is obviously being done keeping sustainability and environmental factors in mind as well. And in fact, let me go across to Dr. Kohli once again. Dr. Kohli, of course, there was a lot of demand when it comes to electrical cars, hybrid cars as well, that some of these items will get cheaper. The taxes on them will be rationalized, because obviously electric is the way forward. How are you placed when it comes to the government outlook of all these tools that can minimize environmental pollution and basically take care of sustainability as well?
I think not looking at EVs for now is a kind of a pause. I won't say that the government, as a matter of policy, has concluded that we are going to let EV be at 5%. We're not going to bring it down anymore, or a 0%, because eventually all vehicles, the aim of Transport Ministry is to transition to a complete EV era in the next 4 to 5 or 6 years. So once you can imagine, if everything is on EV, and then to be exempting it totally, there'll be a significant revenue loss. Although I'm sure Mr. Raj Kapoor may like to endorse me, or may like to differ from me. So I think it's a significant loss to the exchequer that nothing is coming from automobiles. So they are taking baby steps at a time. But for now, a very interesting case in point on automobile, Mr. Kapoor, I would want him to ratify or disagree that some of the price cuts, if these automobile companies, car making companies pass on, although the price cut is 28 to 18, so technically you feel a 10% price dip, but then the price dip, my back of the envelope calculation says, could be 12 to 12.5% as well. And how? Because the input cost of the newer, of course, I'm not talking of the inventory right now, because this inventory may be a bit of a loss to a certain extent, which the companies may have to absorb or pass on some to their dealers or probably the customers in some way because of the inventory. But the new cars which come under the new regime, I would say, because their input costs of the spares is also going down. So this may result in additional savings. And considering the kind of competition, especially in the SUV segment, Vineet, you can expect a deeper cut than 10%. I really don't expect car companies to play mischief and not to pass on to customers, because there's cutthroat competition.
All
so
right.
For EVs, I think the roadmap is clear. We can wait for some time.
All right, we can wait for some time. Mr. Kapoor, where do you stand on this? EVs, of course, is a big area. China, the United States, in fact, the European Union are all focusing their energies on EV. And of course, there is a large amount of subsidiary outlook that is being put forth to this segment as well. How are you placed there, sir?
Well, the fact that EVs are still at 5% is a welcome move. But I'm not as confident that, the EV benchmarks or the EV targets are met in the next 5 years or so, because there's a lot of work that still remains to be done in terms of creating, the right ecosystem and infrastructure for an EV car ownership to be as seamless as your ICE ownership is. So that transition may take a while, but yes, eventually that is the way to go. So we need to do far more work to ensure that our electricity generation is done more green and more clean and not by burning fossil fuels. Because if that be the case, then there isn't much value in conversion. If you're going to generate electricity by burning coal and then use that to run your car, you're just moving uh, pollution from your scenario to a rural scenario. So if we carry on doing what we are doing and without changing track, maybe our EV conversion will take longer than anticipated.
All right, fair enough.
But
Let's also take a look at another industry which has been impacted by these GST reforms. Of course, the question is related to hospitality now. How do these reforms affect the hospitality industry? Will restaurant meals to drop to 5% from 12 to 18% earlier? Hotel rooms under rupees 7,500 will also be charged just 5% GST. This is absolutely fantastic news coming in for the hospitality sector. Hotel accommodation worth less than 7,500 rupees will be pegged at 5%. Hotel accommodation worth more than 7,500, of course, continues to be at 18%. Restaurant meals across categories, depending on category, if it's 12 to 18%, is no longer the valid case. It will be pegged at 5% as well. So huge fillip over there for the hospitality industry as well. What about benefits on procurement of raw materials? How does that change because of this? Well, procurement for restaurants gets cheaper with most foodstuffs moving to 5% slab. Essential items will now be GST exempt. Essential food items like UHT milk and paneer was at 5%. No GST now on them. Indian breads like paranthas and naans and rotis was at 18% now. No GST on them. Fruits, meats, vegetables and processed dairy items was at 12%. It's been brought down to 5%. So, of course, another gain in the hospitality industry as well. Mr. Rawal, coming to you now. First of all, sir, your overall, sort of plank when it comes to these GST reforms. Obviously, the opposition feels that it's too little too late, but anything that, in fact stirs consumption is always welcome. The Americans also credit being the number one economy on two things. One is, of course, the consumption that the economy has been able to derive and achieve. And secondly, it's the roads. Both these things are being worked upon by the government. And of course, this reform is going to be faster than the road network which has come up in the last 10 years.
Good evening, Vinit. The main thing is, you have said this is GST 2.0. The government is already, it seems to be on a blueprint. Earlier, raising the income tax limit to 12 lakhs rupees, all exempted. 85% of the taxpayers, individual taxpayers, goes out of the stream of taxation. Now they are coming out with the similar type of things in the GST by reducing the tax rates by substantially on FMCG markets, FMCG goods. You have quoted that hotel industry, hospitality industry is going to get a big boost. Yes, you are right that this food items and all are going to be exempted. But in hotel industry, there is a very classical thing is going on. If I'm taking a room for 7,000 rupees with an additional bed of 1,000 rupees, my price goes beyond 7,500 rupees. The government charges me GST at the rate of 18%. This comes out to 1,440 rupees. The hotel owner gets only 1,000 rupees. The government gets 1,440, more than that. So these kinds of ambiguities are still there. Moreover, earlier they were getting an input credit by hotel industry on all the rentals as well as the services on the goods produced. Now they are not getting any input. So if there is a 5% GST output is charged without any input, the cost has to be borne by the hotel industry itself. Once it is borne by them, their cost goes up. We don't expect much impact of reduction of hotel rooms cost by that. So this is not that part. Yes, you are right that overall, I think government is on the right path. They are giving an incentive, but it is not because of the tariffs, I seems, because this was already going on. Tariff issue has just come up a month before and that will be sorted out. Sharad always says it's a Donald tariff. I say it may be a Donald tariff, but we have to face the impact of that. He must be smiling at his face that what I have done. So lots of things with this GST relief on various sectors. You have talked about the automobile. Yes, on EV, I think lot of things we have to do if we really want to fight with the environment. We have to, right now we are facing Punjab floods, we are facing so many natural disasters. We have to make our ecosystem in such a way that at least we should be eco-friendly. We need to make a eco-friendly society for that. We have to give teachings on that. So we have to spend more on those aspects. We have to create an infrastructure for that, which I find that very much needed, I think, more in this case. Like there are various steps has been taken. It is not only rate cut, it is basically for the purpose of reduction of litigations. And then on the other side, some clarifications have also come. If I say intermediary services, that was a big issue going on. All these study abroad consultants, they are facing that problem. Now they say from 22nd of September onwards, they will be treated as exports. In earlier era, it was export in service tax. Then in GST, this problem came up and they are facing this.
Right.
Now they
You're
say, what
absolutely
will
right. So
happen to this?
we have to move on. In fact, there is another set of beneficiaries as a result of GST 2.0, and that is, of course, hospitals and healthcare. How has that benefited from GST 2.0? Well, procurement of equipment, materials and medication is set to get cheaper, with a lot of such items moving from 12 to 18% to just 5%. Anesthetics, medical oxygen, instruments used in medical, surgical, dental sciences, surgical rubber gloves, wadding, gauze and bandages all were at 12%. They have come down to 5%. So, of course, healthcare and, medicine at large has gotten cheaper as well. So this is, of course, again a big boost in spending and savings as well. What about medicines for individuals and local medical sciences like Unani and Ayurveda? Well, 33 life-saving drugs are going to be charged just 0%. That is nil, and most other treatment medications are set to drop to 5% from 12%. Unmixed medicines, not for retail sales, spectacles for correcting vision, from 12% to 5% GST. That's also a great move. Blood glucose monitoring system were at 12% earlier, so that bracket has been done away with. What's the situation for health insurance? Well, all individual health insurance is now exempted from taxes under the Insurance for All by 2047 scheme. Health insurance was at 18%. Individual insurance was at 18%. It's at 0% now. So the fundamentals have drastically been changed. Vinesh Menon, the fundamentals here have been drastically changed. You spoke about another core fundamental that should in fact get more attention from the government, and rightly so, because all these are pillars on which a healthy economy, a healthy nation, a prosperous Viksit Bharat can stand. And education has also been slated as one of them. It needs to get a chunk out of these benefits.
Oh, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. And I think you picked up the two most critical sectors as far as I'm concerned, which has to, on whose pillars the country has to progress. One is healthcare, which you just talked about, and the other is education. It is the most significant contributor in nation building. And I think it is a pretty top priority for the government of India today. Because it is being considered as a cornerstone for national development and socio-economic progress. So to that extent, I think I repeat, while I appreciate what's been done, I just want to once again state: is there a way that strategic reforms can be brought in to rationalize and streamline GST provisions applicable to the education sector? And I think that assumes critical importance. You see, what happens in education is that we all know that there is no GST in education services. When you give education to a child, the fees that the child pays is exempt from GST, which are rightly so. But what does that exemption do? It creates unintended financial consequences by blocking the availment of ITC on key inputs, and therefore, input services, lease rentals, repair, maintenance, affiliation fees, digital infrastructure. These are all areas where GST has to be paid, and it cannot be claimed, and it is an embedded cost. And that increases the overall cost of providing education, because possibly they'll try and pass that on to the consumer, which is the child, which is also not good. Now, can that be done? Even there is a concern, because many of these schools are constrained by regulated fee structures and cannot fully pass on this additional burden. So that limits the funds available for critical investments. And I think education is now moving into a space where investments in infrastructure, technology, quality enhancement initiatives, these are all areas that require lots of impetus. Let's take a simple example, right? The government has consistently emphasized on holistic education through schemes in sports. Halo India is it's a big call today to the nation. Fit India movement is a big call to the nation. A lot of money has been earmarked for this. But if a school wants to provide sports services to the children and integrate sports into education, that sports services will have to be taxed. When you buy services from sporting equipments for children, it'll be taxed. Can you claim input? You can't. So these are the concerns that perhaps need to be looked into. And therefore, I think to summarize, GST on certain procurements, denial of ITC for education institutions to create an embedded cost structure, perhaps that goes against the government's own push for holistic education. And my request once again to the Honorable Finance Ministers, open that one window and just go a little deeper. I think if you go deeper, you will see opportunities to make it a little better.
You're absolutely right, Vinesh, and perhaps what you have said is going to serve as a window, as an entry point into realizing that there could be a 3.0 as well, in which a lot of these other issues that still prevail in a number of industries, especially issues pertaining to an industry like education, will be ironed out. We've run out of time. Appreciate everyone who joined in and shared their perspective with our viewers. Thank you so much. We take a short break. We'll be right back.